Well done. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Midland Police Service Board meeting for is 10 a.m. It's marked on here 10 p.m. on the agenda. Wednesday, September 20th, so we're 12 hours early.
Yeah.
Hey, we like meeting during the daylight.
Yeah.
And I'll call this meeting to order and ask if there's any declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none. I have a motion for the approval of the agenda. I just need a mover and seconder. That the September 20th Midland Police Service Board meeting agenda be approved and circulated. All those in favor? Carried. Next, I have a motion for approval of the previous minutes. We were seconder for that. We're a little thin today. Our chair is absent, so I'll just alternate between Diane and Jim. That the July 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Police Service Board meeting minutes be adopted as circulated. Any corrections or amendments needed for those minutes upon review? Okay, all those in favor? It's carried. And no business arising from the minutes. And so now we move right along to detachment report 7.1, the 2023 second quarter reports presented by Southern Georgia Bay Acting Detachment Commander Midland. And there is an attachment that we can bring up on the screen for everyone to follow along with. And we'll turn it over to Inspector Bennett.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good morning, everybody, and for anybody online or watching this, I believe we have the calls for service billing report up there right now. We're going to actually start with the main body of the report, which I think should be in a separate. There it is. It's just organized different down there.
And perhaps we could expand the zoom level on this, so especially some of these tables are a little harder to see. Wow, there we go.
Because of the it's not
Lunch.
Bottom right with the
Here we
little
go.
plus and the minus. Oops, down the bottom right there. No, not quite. A little not quite far. Is that right? On the ribbon panel, on the column it says sign in.
Right.
Yeah, right there.
There you go.
And if you could zoom it in a bit, just to make it a bit bigger. The plus is right above
It's
the
right
minus.
above the one we just clicked.
Yeah, I can. What's that?
I guess we'll see the text flip down to the next one there. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you might want to go a bit bigger so people can read it. I don't know.
Let's try to get to the page width.
Yeah, it's not.
There, right there.
Hammer away on that a couple of times.
There we go.
Oh,
I
no.
know when I watch these things on minus.
It's
Yeah.
hard to read
It's
from
hard
there
to
for
read
people
them.
that like to.
Yeah, I
read
was
the
trying to get the whole, like on the screen.
Perfect. All
I
right, take it
won't
away.
read, thank you very much, Your Worship. I won't read all the text in every single one of these. First thing I'd like to talk about is the community services report. So where were we April to June? What other events did the Southern Georgia Bay OPP participate in? So we had one of our own members, Provincial Constable Alana Dirtnall, recognized on May the 5th with the Ontario Women Law Enforcement Award in Community Service. There's a bit of a history here on the background of that award, which was dedicated to Toronto Police Services Constable Laura Ellis, who lost her life in the line of duty back in 2002. And ultimately, Laura, believed in family and equality, justice, and being true to yourself and friends. And really, Provincial Constable Dirtnall, she's our community services officer, exemplifies this. For those of you that know her, she is just an outstanding person. She does all of our schools, has built tremendous relationships in our schools and with a lot of our youth in the schools. And she is the face of the OPP in those areas. And rightfully so, she was recognized and honored during a presentation in Mississauga. They actually made a video. She made a video thanking everybody, but she was recognized because she deeply cares about the people in our communities and always puts her pride, passion, enthusiasm into everything that she is working on. And obviously recognized for school service, and depicted in the photo there, and I know it's a little bit dark on the screen, but for those watching is, these are all members of Southern Georgia Bay Detachment. We have, Staff Sergeant Lee Janot, Staff Sergeant Natalie Major, Alana in the middle, and then we have, Sergeant Kathy Charlebois and Sergeant, Carolyn Patton Beecher. So really nice honor and, recognition, which she has earned several times over. On the next screen. So the MTO and OPP partnered for a commercial motor vehicle safety initiative that was on June the 8th. That was performed just out on Y Valley Road and Highway 12 in the town of Midland. 24 commercial motor vehicles were inspected during the initiative, resulting in 48 separate Highway Traffic Act charges. Part of what we're doing out there, right, is obviously an enforcement aspect, but there's also a highway safety piece that we want to ensure and focus on to make sure that our roads are safe. You'll see a lot of incidents and accidents happen as a result of unsafe vehicles, and that's what this initiative targeted specifically. There's a breakdown of some of the charges there, just unsafe vehicles, mechanical defects, fail to conduct trip inspections. So they're supposed to be inspecting vehicles before they're using them. Fail to have a proper CVOR, load security issues, so loads aren't properly secured, and proper license, seat belts, and mandatory documentation for all the offenses. There were a lot of other pictures that that were brought to my attention. Besides the 3 featured here, and you could actually see portions of some of these CMVs where the metal rather is physically detaching from the frame, and they're still operating these things on our roadways. So great initiative, good to see, and we're able to pull some vehicles off the road as a result. Absolutely, right, and like a part of, and I know, well, yeah, we do, we have a portion of the 400 highway that runs through the broader Southern Georgia Bay Detachment area, right, and you'll see every year, especially around seasonal tire change time, when tires aren't put on, the inspections aren't properly conducted, you see wheel offs, so tires come flying off a transport truck and hitting people going in the opposite direction, and it's scary, especially we were just talking about before the meeting started on how dark it gets and on how early it is. You'd never see it coming, and that scares me. Yeah, so it's good to see the enforcement, and it continues. I mean, we have regional traffic and provincial traffic teams that focus specifically on enforcement on commercial motor vehicles.
Sir, just a question on that.
Yeah.
So since they're removed from the roadway, what does that mean? Like, there's a big flatbed transport truck come in and basically tow these things to an impound yard? Are they allowed to carry on their way, or what happens?
They'll be taken off the road and towed to usually a facility to like a garage where they have to have mandatory repairs before they're permitted back on the road. So for those that have CVOR, they'll have their CVOR pulled and they'll have the plates taken off the vehicles, which means that they're not operational. So that's what happens when we remove them from the roadways.
And for the guy that doesn't have there was 3 people that I guess should have had CVORs, but didn't.
They'd be significant fines. You'll find on the commercial motor vehicle side for legendary fines, they're quite severe. So they would be charged for not having proper CVORs, and those fines are significant.
And would those vehicles have their plates removed and then be taken off the road as well, or are they allowed to carry on, just not with a load or something?
That exactly, I don't know. I don't know if we pull the plates off of those because I don't do commercial motor vehicle enforcement, but I would imagine they probably would be able to continue on, but they would have a fine leverage against them, and then they have to get a CVR because then they'll get charged potentially the next day if they're stopped. So
Yeah,
unsafe vehicles or pulled right up.
It's an area I don't know much about either. So, but I know that the MTO does partner with OPP, and they used to partner with the town police to do these little blitzes.
Yeah.
And usually, unfortunately, there's always high numbers for charges.
There is.
And are the fines sort of the same for, I'm looking, some of these look like some guy with his pickup truck loading up stuff in the back. And so that wouldn't be a commercial vehicle per se, it would just somebody doing loads from his house somewhere.
Yeah, so if they have an insecure load, the fine on an insecure load wouldn't be as high, say, as like a CVR.
Right.
Yeah.
But same thing, they get pulled off and.
Oh, yeah.
And have to do the necessary.
And have to or secure the load before they're allowed to leave, right? Yeah.
Sorry, this is a good, use of photo, maybe, Julie, can you scroll back to the picture of this? So there's the one, you know, we have a lot of people in town that have lawn maintenance businesses.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the go-to thing, it seems like we have a lot. So that one picture that has like a regular push lawnmower and then a big riding beast. I'm assuming that's one that would need to have some type of straps on it, because if they go over a bump, otherwise the lawnmower's flying off onto the road, right?
Absolutely, yeah, if you hit a bump and you'll watch, and you'll see trailers bounce, right, when you're out on the roadways. Yeah, that could bounce out, and so. The way that I look at it is this, and for even things on the roadway, so you look at the other vehicle with the large, it looks like a large load of wood there, in there. So, you know, okay, so if a piece of 2x4 falls off of the vehicle and you run over in your pickup truck, yeah, you might get some damage, maybe you'll get a flat tire. But if somebody on a motorcycle runs that over, that could be a life and death accident as a result. Or if that 2x4 kicks up and flies out from under somebody's back tire and goes through somebody's windshield, that can be a life and death. So it seems rather simple and it's something that we often see, but the consequences that could come out of that are significant. But yes, absolutely. They're not properly secured and tied down. They would have had to make those things secure before they're permitted to leave, because then otherwise they're just continuing the offense.
Murphy's Law.
Yep.
And then just for people following along, obviously these type of inspections where you see a truck driving down the road full of junk going to the transfer station, which like any day of the week, doesn't appear to have any type of tarp or strap securing it. This isn't something that you would only stop and pull the vehicle over on these blitz days. This is something your patrol officers, as they're driving around normally, would make an observation, because they don't have to be specially trained for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the load is not secure, therefore it's targetable under insecure load. For sure, that'd be a regular part of enforcement, not just a part of a CMV blitz.
That's a good reminder for people cleaning out the garage as we head into winter. You know, if you're
Yeah.
making the run to the dump, as we call it, even though it isn't,
Yeah.
just to make sure you strap it down properly, even if you think that it's too heavy to move, it still needs to be secured.
Yep, and that's like brush piles too, right? You'll see a lot of leaves and brush going out now. Those need to be tarped. So, because ultimately you'll have pieces of the leaves and the brush blowing out of the back of the vehicle or the trailer, so they should be tarped to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I have some school engagement as well. Members of the Southern Georgian Bay OPP and area first responders participated in a Georgian Bay District Bears Pride Wellness Fair annual ball hockey game. And the game featured school staff and students versus first responders, so a lot of fun. And really, it was during Pride Month, and it's a time to celebrate and recognize the 2S LGBTQI plus individuals and communities. We participated in that, supported, and from what I understand, had quite a bit of fun during it. As well, we had St. Anne's Catholic school visit. So we had PC Dirtnall. It was the very last day of school. Went down to St. Anne's and spoke about community helpers, and the class got to see the cruiser. So I think it's great for our children in schools at a very young age to be exposed to positive engagement with the police, right? It's non-enforcement based. It's a lot of fun. They get to go through the cruiser. And we spoke about this in the last police services board meeting, you know, that we have recruiting down right across the board nationally with all first responders, right? And our fire and our paramedics and our police. And I think that getting this level of engagement, getting back into the schools with the kids in non-enforcement, showing them a lot of the positive sides of why first responders do what they do is important. And this is just one example of that. So it's really good.
And we're still good to say that any schools in North Simcoe, or at least in the attachment area, have no issues with having police coming into the school. They don't have that problem that some other jurisdictions are having.
Yeah, I know we don't have that problem at all. Yeah, it's very good. And I will credit a lot of that, especially, you know, and I've only been here now for 4 months, but before my time, those relationships were built and are actively maintained right now by PC Dirtnall. So excellent work.
It's great.
We have another feature here of the Southern Georgian Bay Marine Unit. They were out on patrol during this reporting period from April to June. A total of 314 vessels were checked during 167 hours on the waterways. That's quite a bit. I don't even know if I have that much on my own boat motors. And that's just in a 3-month period. When you think about that, that's a lot of hours on the engines. We had 24 operators charged, 75 other warnings with various offenses under the Canada Shipping Act with their License Control Act. 4 of these charges were being issued for failing to have sufficient life jackets. I just wanted to say it's interesting, and we had some directed patrols along certain shorelines as is featured there, and then we have our general patrol areas right through Midland and Penetang and Honey Harbor. So we largely patrol all these areas day in and day out. Like we have a full-time Marine unit here, as I'm sure the board knows, right? And we're very fortunate to have that. We're one of the only detachments with a full-time Marine unit and a lot of vessels available to us. But I've noticed over the summer period, this is a consistent theme, and it's especially the sufficient life jackets. No, a lot of people are out on the water without having the appropriate amount of life jackets in a boat. And it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's something that's been catching my eye. So I get weekly reports from our Marine unit of where they are, what they've done, and the charges laid, patrols, and warnings too, right? Because I think education is a part of enforcement. It's not that we always have to come out and enforce, but there's an education piece there. That is one of the things, though, that keeps popping up is insufficient life jackets. And we live in marine communities.
Everyone knows they have to have a life jacket on board.
Right, I would like to call it common sense, but I don't know that it is common sense because I keep seeing it come up, so.
No, that fine, is it before a judge? Or is that fine a provincial fine? For not having life-
I believe that's a provincial fine. I'll
Provincial,
double check, yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the life jacket. I was never a Marine officer, but I know they issue lots of them. Yeah.
It's bad enough to have them and not be wearing them in a small open boat, but to not have them at all. That's, or not have enough.
That's right, like I know some people, when they're out and if the vessel's under power, they're not required to wear the life jacket.
Please have it right there.
But it's supposed to be in the vessel and available, and one per person that fits properly as well, right? It has to fit the people, so if you have a bunch of smalls and you need a bunch of extra larges, not sufficient, so.
You can't put 3 smalls on. Like floaties.
I was gonna say, I think I've probably seen that from time to time, but most people are just floating in the water at that point, wearing the floaties, yes. Over to the next screen, just talking about nabbing a driver after numerous complaints on Highway 400. Yeah, so that was the afternoon of June the 4th. We had numerous 911 calls about somebody driving very erratically, forcing other vehicles off the roadway as it headed south along the 400 into Simcoe County. So officers from Southern Georgia Bay Detachment, so ours officers, as well as officers from Huronia West Detachment area, which is Wasaga Beach area, and really OPP detachments were able to intercept the suspect vehicle around Horseshoe Valley Road and got them stopped. Turns out a male driver, a lone person vehicle, was arrested and 25 years old from Toronto, and was charged with dangerous operation while impaired by alcohol and drug, flight from police officer, which means that they try to take off from the police as well, and operation while impaired with BAC, blood alcohol concentration, 80 milligrams of alcohol and 100 milliliters of blood, in excess of that, which is contrary to the criminal code. And further, they charge them with fail to stop on the right for emergency vehicle, drive a vehicle or a boat. So in this case, it was a vehicle. A boat would be interesting.
Yeah.
With cannabis readily available, and contrary to CDSA, and drive a motor vehicle with an open container with liquor, contrary to Liquor Control Act. So quite a bit of things going on there, hence the driving behavior. And so they were arrested, later released, and they have a court date, which would have now come and gone June 29th, plus a 90-day driver's license suspension. As per the ADLS guidelines, and a 14 vehicle impound, of which they are on the hook for. And that becomes expensive as well. Impound fees aren't cheap. So really great stuff. Just wanted to highlight. So as we know, because a lot of members of the police services board and your worship on your side of the town council get calls about aggressive driving, speeders, and you know, it's good to see that often you know, the person has come and gone or the vehicle's come and gone by the time we get a patrol to the area. So it's nice to see that we're able to intercept this one and stop them because with the amount going on here that I see, I think that this would probably have ended very badly if they get them stopped in time. We have an injured bear cub story, which is pretty unique. So June the 25th. So again, we talk about what are police functions and what are not police functions. Generally, we do not rescue injured bear cubs. I can say that. So you know, this is generally a Ministry of Natural Resources type of call. But there was a bear cub found abandoned on the side of the road. This was over in Tiny. It was hit by a vehicle and had a head injury, and the tiny cub named Lenny from Tiny is also recovering at Bear with us right now in Sprucedale. So officers showed up, found this injured cub, picked the cub up, put them in the vehicle in the back of the cruiser and brought her over to the detachment for a little TLC. So essentially we put the cub in the garage bay. We didn't allow anybody else in the garage bay but the cub. And the M&R came the next day and picked the cub up from us. The cub is actually recovering right now in a rehab center, and one of the officers that found the cub was PC Dustin Lemon, one of our members. We're speaking about traffic, very heavily involved in traffic enforcement in our detachment area, and he actually said he'd like to go back when that bear is reintroduced into his natural habitat. One of the other neat things, and you can't tell by the photo here of the cruiser, is that there was actually on the top of the antenna, there was a party hat on top of the antenna, and it was Sergeant Amy Thompson's last day with the Southern Georgia Bay OPP before she retired. And so they were giving her a send off saying, thanks for your service, and off you go. And she has actually since returned, so she's back with us now as a part-time officer. And her passion is most certainly traffic enforcement. So we will see an increase with her returning, and that's her primary function right now is traffic enforcement with a lot of our traffic complaint areas. And so we get our part-timers to do a lot of that and keep them from calls as much as we can and have our regular service members focus on the calls for service. So yeah, so a good news story, and kind of neat. It was her last day and she loved wildlife. Another driving issue here with respect to stunt driving back on May the 2nd. This is over as one of our members, Southern Georgian Bay, a black BMW X5 traveling southbound on Rumney Road over K Township. Clocked vehicle in excess of 50 kilometers over the post limit in the 80 zone, resulted in a vehicle stop. And during that stop, officer entered into an investigation and recovered a quantity of cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, Percocets, Xanax, drug paraphernalia, along with a significant amount of Canadian currency. And we involved our community street crime unit, which is also formerly known as the drug team, assisted and helped process this individual. So great stop by the officers. You know, it's taking that time, I think, from an investigative standpoint, looking beyond just a normal speeding ticket or a drunk driving charge to see what else is going on in that vehicle. And clearly was the case here, and pulled some product off the street that didn't end up in some of our problem areas, as we're all aware of here in town.
Apparently the guy missed all the Netflix series that tells you not to bring attention to yourself if you've got a car load of drugs.
Yeah, there's plenty of educational material out there for folks that engage in that, and some of them just don't read between the fine lines. Yeah, read the
Right,
right.
like the dumb ones.
Yeah, no, it's good. Take them off the roads. Members of the Southern Georgian Bay OPP participated in a public works palooza. So, you know, it's also known as like a show and tell, right? Engage the community members come out, see what product services that the OPP provide. And as you can see in the photo, we have one of our officers out there with one of our canines, which is often a very big hit. A lot of people like the dogs. That was back on May the 27th of this year. And yeah, it was nice just to showcase a lot of the work that our members are out there doing and the services that we provide for our communities.
Just curious as to why the dog is muzzled.
So we used to have a lot of demos with our dogs without muzzles, and over the years, and not OPP specific, there has been incidents where somebody can get nipped or yeah. So it's an interesting thing when you look at our canines, right? There's a lot of selection criteria, and I used to run the canine program. There's a lot of selection criteria that go into these animals. But one of the things that they're trained to do is apprehend if they need to, right? And a part of that is gripping or bite work. So because they're trained to do that, we want to make sure that we, as the thinkers, not that they don't think, but as the thinkers, take precautions to not allow the dog to decide whether they want to do something or not.
An unruly person in the crowd, we're taking you down.
Yeah, I've seen it happen.
Really?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had a dog here that. Like, voice tape. It was 2 minutes then.
Yep.
That was the end of the dog.
Yeah, well, this is it, right? There's times when you want the dog to apprehend and bite and pull
Right.
people out of an area.
Just to put it in the position where. it has
That's
to make a
right. So,
decision.
yeah.
You don't want it to make.
I don't want the dog to decide. I would
Yeah.
rather decide. So, yeah, so we muzzle in public events.
I get it.
Yeah. OPP search warrants executed in Midland. This one did get quite a bit of coverage. I believe even in the last police services board meeting we had, this may have come up. That was during this reporting period in May. Members of the CSU executed a warrant. You know, there was some cocaine, fentanyl, clonazepam, stolen property, which we've now since actually reunited with the rightful owners. We got that done. Seized, and obviously this baseball bat here with a bunch of twisted nails in it, which clearly is not used for baseball. Yeah, so it's interesting to note, and this also came up during our community call and worship. You know, some of the questions surrounded, you know, like if police are doing a warrant, like they're not getting the keys, like there's not a lot of product that we're seeing and why, and you know, the houses, and we're familiar with them, and I know the Queen Street address, a lot of those individuals have just moved to another location because that's generally what happens. But there's generally not a lot of drug product in these structures. People go in, they use, and then they leave. So they're doing that and using these areas as a safe haven. But as a result, the residents in the community are concerned, and rightfully so, because you see a lot of traffic in and out of these places, foot traffic, vehicle traffic. So when you do a drug warrant on one of these places, you will see some product come out, but it's generally not a lot because normally it's used because it's being used by addicts, which we talked about contribute to a broader, you know, community and social problem. But so that's why we didn't see as much here, because that's very common.
I mean, if that X5 had made it past your officers, they might have a bigger stash.
Well, I think so, right? And you know, it's funny when I was reviewing this, I was thinking, where was that X5 going? So yeah, I don't know if we'll ever know. We had 12 persons arrested after a search warrant was executed on a Midland residence. This is back in April. It was an ongoing police investigation from our CSCU Community Service Street Crimes unit. And members represented in that unit, so they come from all detachments in the area, right? So we do have members of Southern Georgian Bay that form it, but also Huronia, West Wasaga Beach, Collingwood. They will all come together to assist each other to do warrants to make sure we have enough people to do the warrant and contain the place. And there's a lot of tactics that go into it, but they did a warrant on Robert Street and ended up pulling out some methamphetamine, fentanyl, MDMA, cocaine, prescription pills, which are fairly common and popular, and another weapon as well, which looks to me like a knife or a machete of sorts, and it looks like a spear gun, which I know is commonly used in fishing, and I don't know if they were actually going to use that for fishing. So yeah, I think you know, largely it's known is that we do have drugs in our communities. I mean, it's no secret. But we also have dangerous people in our communities that are willing to use these weapons and to do things which, you know, I think it is. It definitely is, right? We're very aware of it. It's, you know, it used to be a thing in the past where, you know, you only saw violence in a lot of the broader, larger city centers and the small communities like we live in, especially in the entire catchment area of the detachment. We didn't see the violence, you know, that the city saw. And I think the reality is that we're seeing it now. You know, it's I just spoke at the K Police Services Board meeting last week about some of the shooting incidents we had over there. And I mean, the violence extends as far north now, and we're seeing these issues, and we're seeing a lot of the weaponry and things that we're seizing here at the drug houses, right? Because they're willing to use these things to defend and to acquire and to do what they have to. So it's not uncommon now to see firearms offenses or firearms seized. We do seize firearms out of vehicle stops, and we see it, and we're very aware of it. But yeah, it's reached our communities.
Got a pretty good haul in that one, didn't you?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a better haul, and but this goes back to, and when you see how many different age, like OPP detachments are involved, one is to bolster numbers, but two, it's also because we share information. And one of the things that came up on the community safety symposium, or the call out that was had, was the need to report the information, right? Because a lot of, like, the police know about the problem areas. We do. We know where these people are. We know where they move to. It's a part of our job is to know, and we do know. But there's also investigative steps that have to be taken, especially under law, because we can't just walk into people's houses anymore and grab people. And you know, there's you know, I think a case called Regina versus Feeney that talks about that. And now you need an entry warrant, which is a Feeney warrant, but there has to be substantial investigation and enough evidence to support that warrant being issued. And a part of our messaging back to the public that are observing these, what they believe to be drug houses, is call us and report it. If you don't want to give your name, then Crime Stoppers is a supported program, and it's recognized from the courts, and we are able to use that information to protect the identity of people, to also look at getting grants in places. So I just wanted to reiterate that message that, yeah, we have problems, we have a mechanism to deal with them, but going back to you know, the community or the police, and the police are the community, we very much are. And we need the community support to help us in these investigations and to help us identify. There's more eyes out there every day than there are just police. So we need that. We need that community support. Keep this forward and keeping our community safe. Next slide is our fishing derby. Members of the Southern Georgia Bay OPP Marine Unit participated in the annual Kids Fishing Derby down at the Midland Town Dock. And it was a hit, right? We had mascot there, and I'm sure the mascot's got a name. Handed out roster coupon books to the kids, and just great interaction with the public and with the kids. Nice to see. Now, at this point, there's no questions about any of those things. I'd like to transition over to the Police Services Board report. So let's take a look at violent crime. So just to describe it for folks that may be watching this, there's generally two columns. There's the first column, April to June reports. It changes within this reporting period between 2022 and then this year in 2023. And then the other column is the year-to-date amounts up to June. So in 2022 to June, and then in 2023 to June. So there are slight variations in it in the columns, but ultimately I'll go through them and explain it. And if there's any questions, as we hit them. So we're not seeing any changes in murders, other offenses causing death, and attempted murders. When we go to our sexual assaults between 2022 and 2023, we actually had a decrease, and I'm speaking of the first column of 71.4%. I can tell you in the next Police Services Board's report for the next quarter, I think that we'll see an increase. There's been more sex assaults coming in. And they're not all stranger sex assaults in that the person didn't know the person, they're all known to the person, but we are seeing an increase in this. Our assaults have been down. We went from 27 in 2022 in the same reporting period, which is a decrease of 18.5%. Our reduction stayed the same. We're 2 for 2, so no change in that. Our robberies, we had 1, so that's a theft with violence ultimately, and none within this reporting period. So it's a decrease of 100%. And other crimes against a person went from 29 to 27 this year, down 6.9%. I think we spoke with this in the last meeting, is that, you know, we'll see the crimes, property crimes, all of these issues going as it flows. We'll see increases, decreases. That could be largely attributed to who's in the area. A lot of people commit the same crimes versus who's in custody or who's new to the area, maybe committing these crimes, or who has moved out of the area. So we definitely become familiar with these people as the police in the community. Property crimes. We had 1 arson in this reporting period. We had break and enters. We went from 9 to 13, so we had an increase in B&Es up to 44.4%. Theft overs, we had a decrease of 20% from 5 to 4. Theft unders have increased from 94 to 103. The interesting part here, and this caught my eye as I went through this report, was if you look right beside that in the year-to-date June column, you go from 135 to 194. So even though we only see a 9.6 increase, overall year-to-date, we've seen a substantial increase of 43.7%. And I think that contributes, especially when you look at our break and enters of an increase of 46.2% at the same time, it points to issues, even your frauds, of larger socioeconomic problems that we see in town with addictions and homelessness. And I've already spoke to this once, but I think it's worth speaking to with the board as well, is that, you know, addictions and homelessness aren't necessarily, well, they're not crimes. You know, they could have mental health implications to them. Or it could be people that are out of a job and have nowhere to go because they have family supports. So these aren't illegal things, right? And I think as a society, we have to recognize that. And not generalizing, but there definitely is a link between addictions, the need to fuel that addiction, and the crimes that occur as a result. And people that are homeless and have no other needs, there is a link to crimes and you know, statistically proven in society. So even though that addictions and homelessness are not police issues, a lot of the residual outcome of those things, the calls for service and the increases that we see, are as a direct result of the things that we see in our community and are the result of broader socioeconomic problems. And I know that our chair, Mike Osborne, isn't here, but he did put an article in the Midland paper that I referenced on the last one of the rate of violent crime even increases, right? It's a concern. But I think Mr. Osborne hit the nail on the head. It's attributed to a lot of other broader community issues that are going on that need some addressing and focus. And I've been in touch with his worship, the mayor, about some ideas around that, on how we partner together as a town, community, and groups to help support that. Even though it's not primarily a police function, we definitely have an interest in it and are happy to support, because these are our communities that we all live in. And I could talk with some of that after and be looking for the board support and pushing that forward as well. So, just interesting parallels there, and those things catch my eye because I do see them going up. I see the calls, I hear them every day. And you know, our thefts from the local Walmart, Shoppers Drug Marts, and a lot of our grocery stores are going through the roof. It's, people are stealing food, they're stealing things to trade for money.
They don't have money, so, yeah.
So they steal them, right? And some of these characters that are involved are people that have done this their whole lives. Others are newer people that maybe fell in hard times, but are trying to make ends meet. So, you know, I think there's definitely some more work that can be done there. On our drug crime, we've had possession. So drugs have increased, simple possession. If you look at the year to date, 133.3%. Drug crimes are going up, possession is going up, use is going up. Our trafficking is actually down quite a bit. When you look at the year to date, we went from 8 to 1 trafficking offense. And then importation and production, we have none. So I think, we see some increases in the simple possession and a decrease in the trafficking on who's actually pushing, but
Or trafficking people that have been caught, and
that's right. Oh, yeah, it's,
like,
statistics are, definitely indicative of those who are caught, not meaning it's not happening. Because obviously it's happening because people are getting it from somewhere. So people are trafficking, and it could be, I think that UMWX5 would be an example of somebody who trafficking. So
Just on the possession, Brent, this is something that came up, there's several questions in our community safety Zoom chat, but unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to get enough public Q&A. My fault, we burned too much in the bios and intros. Next time, lesson learned, I'll publish that on the internet, people can read about that, let's just get to that, right? And we will do another one. But we'll talk about that in some of the business section. But on the possession front, one of the questions that was asked, and it kind of ties right into this, is when police officers see open drug use, so somebody's sitting in an alleyway or on the front porch of a library and they've got the needle in their arm and off they go, right? They're injecting their drug of choice. People are asking, why aren't the police arresting and charging these people? They're in possession of prohibited substances, or controlled substance. Why are they not being arrested for possessing these drugs and using the drugs?
and never mind in a public place.
And this is something that'd be probably worth talking about, and we kind of talked about it on the call, but we didn't talk about this one specific thing. You can drive around Midland right now and you'll find open drug use, whether it's smoking a pipe or a joint or injecting. And we find lots of discard needles. Maybe you can speak a little bit about, what do police do, if anything? Is there a point charging? Is the prosecution doing anything about this? It's a bigger topic, but I think it's maybe worthy of spending a couple minutes on.
absolutely, no, for sure, Your Worship. Thank you for that question. I'm going to say 2 things here. So, there is in other communities in Canada, and you'll see some of it in the US as well. So maybe I'm going to say 3 things here. There is a movement afoot to decriminalize simple possession. I am also aware through some of our police services that are actively looking into this, larger police services, you have Vancouver City Police, Toronto Police, we're also doing some research into it. And I'm aware that, they have consulted with police services in the United States to see what the actual outcomes of that were, right? And I think you look at it and it's being viewed as an addiction. It's being viewed potentially through mental health and issues where, people are going to do this anyhow because they're addicted to it. So does the enforcement actually fix the problem? So does actually charging these people curb the behavior? And I would say, no, it doesn't curb the behavior. Am I saying that, within our communities here, I think we should decriminalize small amounts and use? I don't think that. I don't think that that's the answer either. So if public are observing this and call the police, my expectation is that the substance at minimum would be seized, and then the officers have the discretion on whether they want to charge or not. And that would largely depend on the circumstances surrounding that investigation in that case. So every officer has a discretion to decide whether they want to proceed with charges. I'm not saying that we shouldn't proceed with charges, so I want that clear. But I'm saying that the public should definitely bring that to the attention of the police. That is illegal, and that most certainly is a chargeable offense. So that's the straightforward answer. Looking at we just spoke about homelessness and addictions. So I was speaking with an officer, and I briefly spoke with his worship about this as well. There's an initiative called the Rapid Intervention Support Team, RIST, out of Hamilton. They set it up. So what you'll see in communities, and I see it here already, and just being here a short time, is we have a lot of community groups doing things. But then we also have times when we meet as groups, we talk about the issues, but then we go away and largely the issue still exists because I don't think we have like a full-time team to look at that and address those, to actually deal with folks and try to get them the supports they need But then to ensure that the supports continue, a single meeting of counseling on addictions isn't gonna solve that. That's continued ongoing support. And even placing people in homes and finding jobs, and so getting them back on their feet. So I was speaking with this officer down in Hamilton, and I said, how's this program working? Like, do you have any success stories or anything like that? He goes, absolutely. We've had over 10,000 contacts. We have hundreds of success stories. And he says, because I was talking about some of the open liquor complaints that we get, or drug use in front of the library. And I said, I'm of two minds, right? Sure, we could go up and charge folks for public alcohol, open alcohol. You can't do that. I said, but ultimately they have an addiction, so they're not going to stop that. So as soon as we give them the ticket and leave, they can go in the garbage, and then they can open another beer. Because generally the only people that care about paying their fines are those people that want to drive, because you're not getting your license back and don't pay your fines. He says, interesting you brought that up. And I was talking to him about some of our local issues here in the town. And he said, so we have a person that we've helped, totally rehabilitated, has actually had children, trying to get his kids back now, working towards that, got him placed in housing, has a stable job, getting back on his feet. He's trying to get his license so he can drive to work, but he has over $20,000 in unpaid fines for liquor tickets. So on one hand, absolutely enforcement's a piece, but I think when we look at how we approach this broader issue, I'm not saying enforcement's not an option, it most certainly is, but I think we also have to be open to the idea of how are we really going to help these people versus put a Band-Aid on a temporary solution that's really not going to solve the problem. And I think that's where we have to have more discussion as a community over just, laying paper on people or taking their alcohol, because then what are they going to do? Are they going to break in somewhere? Are they going to smash somebody's window to steal
You're
change?
doing causing resentment.
So, yeah, I'm not suggesting we do nothing about it, but I am very interested from a police standpoint and police in Southern Georgian Bay, that we find ways to work together with our other community groups to help actually do something about the issues.
I just think there might be a bit of a distinction between sitting having an open can of beer, or even smoking a bit of cannabis because it's legal to smoke it, versus needles, and then having needles around and
Absolutely.
that kind of thing. So, to me, you have to focus on the things that are the most damaging, serious, and that potentially harm other people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sitting on the street having a beer, it's not harming me, unless you become aggressive or violent or something. But if you're sitting there and you're using a needle, and now you throw that needle on the ground and potentially someone steps on it or gets injured with it, that's not a whole story.
Yeah, it's very true, right? And it also speaks to a sense of the feeling of community safety, right? We will get complaints, and I'm sure we've all heard that people won't feel safe. And people won't feel safe, especially if they're seeing open needle use and people sitting in business doors shooting up drugs. So my position on that as a detachment commander here is no, those people will be charged. We will seize that and blow them away, right? We're not going to tolerate that. And speaking about the decriminalization of some of the drugs that we see in other communities across the country, that is an unintended consequence. So they're actually, some of the police services are seeing an increase of open drug use around daycares, around schools, around the churches, around, areas that people would normally associate with areas that need to be safe for children, right? That lead to a sense that the community is not safe and it's not good. So those are some of the unintended consequences that are being reported now on the decriminalization of simple possession. So I agree. I don't support that. I think that needs to be dealt with. And if people do observe that, please call us. And absolutely. Go for your worship. Sorry, long answer to question, but it's
okay. Well, I've just added talking about the rapid intervention support team into new business, and we can talk about that later and to see whether that's something that we need to endorse, who leads it, whatever. So just today, thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks, your worship. We're just talking about our next slide is our clearance rates. Our clearance rates for violent crime, looking at year to date, we see a difference of about 1.2%. But if you look for the same reporting period, in the other column, we're down 4.8%. Property crimes, ultimately, we're down 2.7, and then year-to-date 4.8. Our drug crimes were up 26% for this reporting period, and year-to-date is an increase of 23.8%. When we look at unfounded, so things that were actually investigated, proven not to be the case, we have a decrease in unfounded cases, so from 38 2022 down to 18 in 2023, so that's a change of 52.6% negative. And year to date, I'll just say that we have a decrease as well of 31.3%.
Is that due to better investigation or just, like, I'm just wondering if the unfounded part, it takes time to investigate all these things and to come to actual
Conclusions.
information and conclusions, so.
Yeah, I would say that could be to a few things, right? It could be, I don't know that I'd say to the quality of the investigation. I would say that it could be to the availability of witnesses, right? Available evidence to help us either prove or disprove something, because everything that's reported isn't always exactly the case. And sometimes it's reported to be one thing and then it turns into be another thing.
Something else.
Yeah, so that I would say that could be some of the issues or some of the cause there.
The part of it could be the quality of the reports coming in. People are
That's-
calling in legitimate complaints
Right.
that are exactly what they, they appear to be.
Right.
Or there's something else that, if it doesn't appear exactly, it doesn't present exactly what was called in, something else found, it still counts as a valid police interaction. Therefore, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't score that as unfounded just because the guy called saying, oh, there's a guy waving around like a handgun on me. Well, okay, so you're gonna fly down there anyway, so you don't know one way or the other. Oh, it turns out to actually be a valid thing. So you wouldn't score it as unfounded because it wasn't a replica, right? Just for people to understand maybe how it works.
So you would see founded, and then you'd also see a charge there of carrying
Yeah.
firearm.
Right.
That would go in the UCR as well.
Right.
And also these, right? A lot more cell phones now. I've actually had people come to my office out on the highway and bring cell phone evidence of what they suspect to be drug trafficking and use in some of the hot spots in town that we all know of. And so a lot of video evidence is helping us as well form and help shape investigations because of what's coming forward from the public. Saying, hey, I caught this on my camera and look at this. It's like, oh, yes. And do you know who that person is? Yes. Oh, thank you. And off we go, right? So common question, right? How do we solve more crimes? And video is one, which I think under new business as well, it's worth speaking about the CamSafe program.
Yes.
And then some other ideas I have. So
Perfect.
yeah.
There's a question about the shooting in Victoria Harbor. The guy that owned the donut shop. Did he not pass away?
So the person that was shot, I'm just trying to get my dates right because there was two persons shot in the harbor. The person that was shot later in the summer did in fact pass away. Yeah.
So that's not treated as a murder?
Yeah, it's being
So he
investigated and
didn't,
treated as
he
murder.
didn't record it on it as a murder.
Well, it's later, it's in the different reporting.
It's in a different report.
Yeah, it's in a different report. Yeah, so we'll see that and yeah, but so you won't see that for Midland Police Services Board, but we'll see it for
I see,
Tay. Yeah, so we'll see the murder there.
okay.
Because initially, somebody shot, right? So that's an attempt murder. And then if they pull through, then that would be the charge that we would look at pursuing if the person ends up passing, which was the
Thank you
case.
for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem.
And I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop because it's happening all around us and we're the geographic, center and hub. And it's just a matter of time. Like we've gotten off lucky this summer, I think. I'm not looking forward to that phone call or the text message saying we have an incident in town, but it just seems to be reversed. You'd think that kind of nonsense would be happening in Midland, not in the more urban, our neighboring municipalities, but
Yeah, no, it's happening in neighboring municipalities right now.
Very hard to see what's happening at all.
Yeah, I'm very alive to the fact that we're recorded here, so I'll reserve any comments I have about those cases or perhaps any follow, but yeah, we're and like I said to the Police Services Board, with respect to these investigations, because they're ongoing, I can't comment, but I can say that we are putting every investigative resource that we have on these and are putting a lot of attention on bringing those responsible to justice, right? So they are, there are quite the investigative teams on these murders.
There was a news
It's
article
significant.
just recently citing, it sounds like you're telegraphing that there's some announcement to be made or some news coming.
Yeah.
In relation to this, so we'll eagerly await that as a more simple community.
I think the article says that the OPP assures justice will be served. Now, if you read my quotes, I actually don't assure. I say that we are putting every investigative team and thing that we have into this to bring those responsible to justice. So we'll see the outcomes of those investigations because they're quite involved.
People are pretty jittery about it.
Oh, for sure, right? It's, smaller communities. And like I said, we generally don't see this up here, but when you see the seizures that officers make and, vehicle stops and there are guns, we get complaints of people pulling guns on people in town. We have one here in Midland, it's here, it's present, right? And that's all we can do is urge the public to notify us when we see these things, call us. But I think the assurance that I want to make and want the communities to know is that we are on them and we are investigating them with everything we have, and that won't stop. Switching over to traffic charges, HTA, criminal code traffic, non-criminal code traffic, and it's LLA. Well, it's now Liquor License Control Act, I believe, in the Southern Georgian OPP area. So we are looking at our 2023 Q2, so April, May, June, same reporting period. We have 718 Highway Traffic Act charges, 2 criminal code traffic, 22 non-criminal code traffic, 0 LLA, which is LCA, and our 148 under other. So when you look at the amount, these are all provincial stats essentially. When you look at the amount of charges, that's 890. So I think that's a big number, right? I mean, is 890 sufficient? If it was 2, I'd probably be going, I got to look into that. It's a lot of enforcement that's happening, right? And I know we get a lot of traffic complaints from our communities. And somebody actually in one of the other police services boards brought up, it might be helpful to, if we put this out over media on the fact that we are getting this many charges, because a lot of the public call in and say, well, they're speeding on my street and this person's driving fast and, the police would never get them. And I think it's worth noting we are out there. We have 890 charges within a 3-month period. Plus, I would submit that this doesn't include all the other calls to service that the members face out there, which are significant. This was an extremely busy summer with some of the highest calls for service that we've seen. And Southern Georgia BOPD, it's been very busy. And I credit the officers that are out there making it happen every single day. They're out there doing the calls, they're doing the enforcement, the proofs and the numbers, and serving our communities. So yeah, great work, and I know it's been very busy for them.
The one glaring obvious thing is that I can't imagine a summer goes by where someone doesn't have open liquor, there's no liquor LLA charges, that's low hanging fruit, easy stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that there was 0.
Yeah.
I think speaks to what we were talking about earlier. There's no way officers just on general patrol don't observe these things.
Yeah.
Never mind people calling in about people with open alcohol downtown. So what this is showing is that they're using their discretion, right? Assuming they're not blind and simply choosing not to charge it.
Yeah.
Oh, they may be dumping alcohol, but they're
Is
not.
that considered highway traffic numbers though? Downtown open alcohol?
No, so LLA wouldn't be, so this is
No.
related to traffic related, like liquor
Stops.
consumption. Yeah,
Right.
so if they stop somebody and they
Open
have
alcohol.
open alcohol.
Right.
So you're right, there's discretion there. I know this from being an officer myself. So you pull somebody over and they might be speeding, might be a seatbelt, or it might be an open, you go to deal with them. So most officers, having discretion, won't issue every single ticket, right? You didn't sign your ownership in ink. So for those on the line, you have to actually sign your vehicle ownership in ink. If not, that's a chargeable offense. Yeah, so you better have it, right? There's a lot of license plates out there right now that aren't renewed since provincially we've done away with the bell tags. There's still an onus on people to renew their license plates online. And so with our automated license plate readers, the LPRs in the cruisers, we get dings for every vehicle that goes by. So it signifies there's something wrong with the vehicle. The very vast majority of those are expired plates because people.
Well, but for years, you were sent a renewal notice, you went and you got your sticker and everything. It would be helpful if they still sent a renewal notice saying, go online and renew your plate, it's due.
Yep, yeah, the notice I
know.
yeah,
I don't think I'd get one unless I'm,
Just with your licenses and
yeah,
other legal.
well, I know, but
Yeah,
I'm
not-
63 years old and for 60, or, 50 years of that or whatever almost, I got a thing in the mail to remind me. Now all of a sudden, I don't think of it unless,
Yeah, if you go on the website and subscribe, you'll get an email.
You get an email
notification, But you have to proactively
along with my
subscribe.
other 300 emails.
So like,
yeah.
So we are saying-
Sure it doesn't go to spam, but going back to this,
they're charging people for the speeding offense and not gonna add on all the other.
Yeah.
None of these people were worthy of the special attention that would sometimes come where people, depending on their attitude, may find themselves with a bit full of tickets.
Well,
Instead of just a speeding ticket.
Yeah,
so I would say in there, yeah, it could be the case, and I don't know every stop, right? But it could be the case where the officer has chose to exercise discretion. I can tell you the general rule of thumb, especially in policing, is if the driver was driving and had open alcohol readily available, they're getting charged. Like, there's no way you're driving and having alcohol. If you have somebody in the backseat that's drinking a beer and there's nobody else, you may deal with the driver on something else and say, that is mine, it's gone, but you're getting done for this and this, and that's the way it's gonna work. So they definitely have the discretion. Yeah, I would say probably in almost 900 interactions, there's most certainly some LLA in there somewhere. But yeah, they chose not to enforce that for whatever reason, but that's their discretion. Traffic charges, so we're looking at now specifically speeding, seatbelts, impaired and distracted, so that's what we call our big four. And our speeding, we're looking at 328 specifically, whereas the last column was just Highway Traffic Act in general. Our seatbelts are 19, our impaired are 0 for this period, and distracted driving are 340 total for the big four, which is pretty cool.
Really popular.
Yeah.
So no impairs. In Midland Patrol.
during
No,
April, May and June.
Yeah, during that period, no impairs.
Huh.
Yeah. Which.
It's
It's
Right.
funny.
There are lots of impairs, we just didn't catch any.
I was going to say, and I don't have it here, but I do see the number of rides that come in, and yeah, they didn't pick up any impairs in the rides, which are amazing, because there's a lot of ride checks being done, like on the daily, actually. Now, they won't take locations, of course, so people don't know, will avoid,
Mhm.
center
It's
sections.
the Tuesday ride program.
Yeah. Yep,
That's good, that's good.
Goes to the
it is good
Friday.
news, and so it could be for a variety of factors, but I would say, I'd be interested to see our next quarter reports, especially as the warmer weather is coming out, to see if we've
Yeah.
had some increases there.
Yeah, don't stop up outside of a marina
And maybe,
Yeah.
yeah,
on Sunday
yeah,
afternoon.
Sunday afternoon, or
See,
maybe
like-
do on a Thursday payday somewhere.
Yeah.
We went over that news story there of the one stop, right, where the person was impaired and whatnot, but that, where we got them, would have been within Southern Georgia Bay, so that's why it didn't show for us, so they're out there, but. Looking at MPCs, collision by type, when we look at our fatals, we had one fatal. During this reporting period, in 2023. Our personal injury, we've actually had a decrease for the reporting period of 16.7, but when you look at the amount of PIs to date, we've increased from 7 to 14, so 100%. Property damage, 50 to 55, so we had an increase of 10%. Year to date, we actually had a decrease from 144 to 105 and 27.1% negative. One of the interesting things, and I think that a lot of collisions, well, it could be fatigue, right, and could be for a variety of factors, but I spoke about this in as well, and I think it, you know, we all probably see it out there, is people seem to be generally impatient when they're driving them, with driving behavior, right? Increasing aggressiveness, right? A lot of that driving behavior directly contributes to accidents and people getting hurt out there on our streets. Now, that I don't know what the strategy is or to combat that other than just increase enforcement and keep doing traffic enforcement on these folks, right? But I do notice a marked change in society. I see it myself. We all see it on the road driving day to day. We're always driving, right?
There's the person zooming up on the right beside you and across the street.
Walking in here, I was in front of the building.
Yep. People ripping around.
Bananas,
Yeah.
or something, I don't know, what it does matter.
And I know on the last police services board meeting here, we spoke about some of the AMPS program and automated enforcement pieces and, you know, red light cameras and traffic cameras and thoughts on that. But it certainly is a mechanism to issue a monetary penalty to these folks. But I wish there was something to issue an attitude adjustment in society as a whole. But fatalities in our detachment area, we had one fatal here, MVC. I know that was over actually in construction zone, which after that a bunch of changes came. Well, we had that fatal and we had a PI after, and then there was some work there and changed the layout of that. And thank goodness that that's almost gone on 93 there. Yeah.
It's a busy section of the road.
It is, yeah. I see largely it's pretty tame there now, which is good to see. And for a while, we actually had officers there as well, lights on, and slowing traffic down for traffic taming, right? So that was in that area. Zeros for the rest. And obviously we had one person killed. That was that fatal. Switching over, so the primal cause factor. So what directly contributed to that fatal? So I can tell you, in that one, specifically, you know, it was actually a rear end. The driver came up and hit the person from behind, and the person went off and died as a result. But it wasn't speed, it wasn't alcohol. Personally, you know, I think it could have been inattentive, not paying attention. However, the primary cause of that collision wasn't attributed to inattentive behavior. So, and I don't know how that investigation concluded, whether it was equipment or issues with the vehicle, why they couldn't stop. I remember hearing stuff about that, so it could have very much been that. But it wasn't any of the four here, and wasn't wearing not wearing a seatbelt as a contributing factor. So they did not contribute to that fatal. Over to our public complaints, policy service conduct. Conduct is treatment of the public. We had two complaints, which is pulled from our professional standards bureau commander reports. That is now changed to the also professionalism, respect, inclusion, and leadership. It's not PSB anymore. Oh, there it is. Well, and it also includes any complaints as well that are submitted to the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, which is a separate independent body from police services that conduct investigations into officer conduct. So we had two of those from April, actually, yeah, here. From April to June, we had 2,127.75 cruiser patrol hours. I don't know what the gas bill on that would be, but it would be substantial. That's a lot of cruiser patrol. I can remember myself being out on the road and driving and doing, I used to do a lot of traffic enforcement for, 10, 11 hours of a 12-hour shift. So we do have a lot of patrol out there. We have officers out on our bikes. We had 14 and a half hours of bike patrol and 236.75 hours of foot patrol. And then our schools were starting to slow down there. So we had 3.5 hours of school patrol hours.
I'm surprised there would have been nothing for Marine Patrol during that time period.
Yeah.
In June, we would think there would have been something.
Yeah, I know that they were definitely out on the water. Let me follow up on that.
That's probably because it only captures Midland Bay, right? Because there's no.
True. Yeah, because it is scored directly to Midland. I bet that would be why.
Oh,
Actually.
So it
There's no
wouldn't-
water.
No.
In Midland.
So that's a good point, Your Worship. Actually, I do remember having that conversation. There was talk of having our marine unit, try to classify which shores they're off out in the boat. And so,
Whether it be Entee, Midland.
yeah, so, and
Victoria
so
Harbor.
it's not, driving on the highway is pretty clear cut when you enter township.
Right,
Out on the marine, it's looking, going,
yeah, how close are we?
Saturday, tiny, Midland, right, where are we? So, and it came back, well, hey, how about, you have GPS in the boat? So my response, absolutely, we do, and we can certainly do that. But the more time I have officers looking at their GPS in the office, trying to figure out where
Less
they're,
time.
less time they're actually out on the water
Yeah,
dealing with them. And I'd rather them out on the water dealing with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we, our marine patrol hours are significant. Well, the, one story that we covered was 300 some hours, right? That's quite a bit.
Where do they bike? So
Yeah.
bike patrol hours, so are they on like the rotary trail or where?
Yeah, they'll go over, like, we'll have them go through town, a lot of times they'll bike through the marina, we do get some complaints, like from our marinas of suspicious people down there looking at boats and things like that, so, yeah, they'll do bike patrol hours all over the place.
I just recently found out there was a complaint about drug use and strange people on boats at our sailing club, which shocked me, but
Yeah, it's generally not something associated to the sailing club.
I mean, we're right next door to the marina and people do wander in.
Yeah, they do, yeah, and they'll use where they can. And, yeah, so our foot patrol, I actually personally, I like the foot patrol. It's good for the community, to see our members out there, right in the streets, talking to our businesses, talking to the folks on the street. And I know I've been doing patrols myself and the community is welcoming. I think that there could be a perception out there at times, right, that, people don't like the police and you hear this. I don't find that to be the case at all. I find, it's 90% of the people in our communities are great people. That's a generalization. Whereas you may have 10% of the population that, are a lot of the ones committing the crimes and making issues for us that, so 10% require 100% of a lot of the work we do. But our communities are good communities. We have a lot of great welcoming people. I know when I walk the street, people are talking and stopping and how you doing, and it's good. So I do like to see our foot patrol hours up, and that's something I personally like to see high. So I want to see that engagement. And then Your Worship and I have obviously spoke about some other ways to increase visibility in our communities and using alternate methods other than sworn police officers. What can we do with that? And so that's something else.
That was last night by a member of the public in very citing the use of special constables at the courthouse. Why couldn't that be extended to patrolling downtown Barrie?
Yep.
So this conversation is starting to happen.
It is.
Or can.
I think it's going to happen more. It's I was over in Ottawa, and it's come to my attention now because I started digging into this more for our own communities here. I know I was walking around Ottawa in the vibrant market and I see vehicles, cruisers with special constable written all over them. And there's actually special constables out. They have arrest authorities, but they are civilian members, but they are generally engaging in non-enforcement activities and they can if they need to. But they are walking around talking to people and showing visibility and have direct access to officers, right, by radio. So you don't call, you don't wait on hold. There's none of that. They get somebody there if there's a problem right away. And Peel Region just started up a similar initiative. So it's funny we're talking about this. So actually tomorrow I have a call on this exact issue. And looking at what we can do within the OPP, can we get something started like that, or even I'd be willing to volunteer us as a pilot to start looking at alternate methods, because we know recruiting is down. We know it's hard to get more officers. We know it's a difficulty. Okay, well then can we do this, right? The is now starting up the cadet program again, and I believe we have an interested person for this area as a cadet. So again, that's something we could use a cadet for. That's something we use our part-timers for. And that's something we could also look at using special constables for. And I'd be happy to go through the motions and get that started here. So yeah, there's actually a review going on right now organizationally, which I've come to learn since we last spoke, Your Worship. that we are looking at different ways to use our specials. So, I think one day we may see that come to fruition. Yeah, it's,
And while we're on that topic, then we could have done this but there's a moratorium on any enhancements to service delivery. So even if we wanted to give an extra $1 million to go compete to get more police in Midland, we can't. But there isn't a moratorium on getting civilians, which, you know, a special constable is, or hybrid, but they are, that's core. So if a program like this, we get some legs and get the support, there's a lot of moving parts, if you get the association, the union, you know, to not resist this. If this could come to fruition, then it's not free, but it's something that we could cost out as an enhancement and fund. Maybe the pilot program wouldn't cost us as much because we're piloting it, but it's definitely a conversation. If we can have more police cars in town. You know, when you look at Ottawa, for example, the entire transit system, mostly transport, whatever they call it now, is entirely policed by special constables. And you'll see the cars with big special constables. So that's one of the rules in the police act, or whatever it's called now. Has to be this clear delineation between police officer and special. Any of the campus police in most universities, entirely special constables. Under the supervision.
Go transit.
Yep, go transit, right, Metro Links. So this is not out of the box thinking. This is just extending something that is working and has been working well for more than a decade, and putting that into small town, small communities to help enhance with police presence. So
Yeah.
I think this is a fantastic initiative, and one that, you know, it's great to see a detachment commander wanting to take the lead on this, because there's a mountain to climb. I think with an organization the size of WP, even though civilianization is not a new concept, it's kind of frontline policing has always been something that, you know, that's the invisible line that nobody wanted to cross with the civilianization of policing. We're happy to let prisoner transport and court security and all the kind of just gross jobs that the frontline guys don't want to do, but now we're talking about putting special constables potentially in the front line. And if we can get past that and negotiate peace with the unions effectively, to allow us to come to pass, this could be a game changer all across the province.
Oh, it's something I'm definitely willing to explore and take on. Like I said, hopefully introduce it here. If you do a pilot, I'd be happy to. And then come back to the board with some suggestions.
So just to be clear, they don't have the power to pull cars over and write speeding tickets. But there's a lot of things you can have in your designation. It's just in how they craft the designation with the province. And you can have a very large laundry list of things that you're designated to do.
Yeah. So we're able to do.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it happen, right? Like we just talked about Ottawa, Peel, they're doing it. So I know North Bay is gonna take it on too. So yeah, it's something I'm definitely interested in pursuing here.
Cool.
Moving over to motor vehicle collisions, looking at 2023 property damage, we had 111, 15 PI, 0 fatals. And as compared to 2022, we're actually up on PIs, but down on property damages. So that's good to see. The next slide is the calls for service billing report summary, which essentially, and I didn't go through it on the last meeting, it's really just the time standard weight and on how many hours we spend investigating and assigns that year-to-date weighted hours. Ultimately, you know, I touched on it last time, our drug offenses clearly take some of the most. We won't see it here. We haven't had any murders, but those are going to have quite a bit of time associated to those as well. The more serious the crime, the longer it's investigate, more resources that we throw at it. So if there's any specific questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. But other than that, just got some, and your worship, still fairly new at this, just talking about new business. I would like to talk about that CAMSAFE program and whatnot, but I'll follow the board's lead on that on when we do it.
Yeah, that's great. I've got a few notes to toss on. It's good. It's always ideal if we come up with these ahead of time so they can be on the agenda, so everybody knows we're going to talk about them. But that's going to be the advantage of having the recording, is that you know, this won't go just, there's nobody in the audience. People will pick up on this, and I'll do my best to try and promote what we've been talking about. People that are keen to hear about community safety initiatives. Well, of course, as we head into the community safety symposium on October 19th, where you'll be one of the spotlight people on the panel, we'll have an opportunity to talk about some of this in that form too. So yes, excellent. Okay, so two usual suspects, if you don't mind, for this next motion. Perfect. That the 2023 second quarter reports is presented by the Southern Georgia Bay Acting Detachment Commander be received for information. Those in favor? Carried. Perfect, so we don't have anything in, item 8 for reports, but we do under financial, item 9. So we have the financial report ending August 30th, 2023. And this is, more for the board's, interest, because, as you know, this board doesn't have any ability to control costs when it comes to policing. We pay the bill, and we, routinely ask police, sir, can we have some more? So this is a breakdown, just so you can see where the cost bucket is. Any questions about this snapshot?
I know that you received.
By process of elimination,
Yeah.
we have a seconder.
Yeah.
That the financial report ending August 31st, 2023 be received for information. Those in favor? It's carried. And then we have the remuneration report. And this is the standard, our members are remunerated for their efforts in our meetings. I'm off here just because I opted out of it, because I'm already on the payroll today, and especially Wednesdays, it's my one of my mayor days in town. Anyway, this just shows the compensation. Any questions about this? It's exactly as defined in our policy. All right, so let's do this one. Roll the dice. Okay, very good. Midland Police Service Board remuneration report ending August 31st, 2023. Be received information. Those in favor? Carried. All right, item number 10, correspondence. We have 2 items for correspondence. They're attached to the agenda. The common thread or the common denominator are really HTA issues around loud mufflers, excessive noise, speeding, all the things that we're really challenged to work on. The letters themselves are included in the document. Is there anything specific in these 2 submissions that the board wanted to pull out and discuss?
I see that, are these both concerning, the letters both concerning the traffic on William Street? It looks like to me, right? Or is this all one letter?
No, there are 2. Yeah, so one is focused more on William, which is Truck Road, and
Yeah,
for whatever reason, you can catch people speeding up William, never mind going down.
right. I
The
found,
other ones are
it
more
seems
street.
to me that traffic posted indicator of your speed and so on. I think I do notice people slowing down on that hill ever since that was put in. But I mean, the people that are gonna speed, I don't think that thing makes any difference to them, but it does for the regular everyday person that just doesn't realize they've crept up in their speed. It does kind of indicate slowing down, but I was reading this one about down at the corner, basically Young and Loading. Is there any enforcement that's going on surrounding?
Loud vehicles,
Yeah.
I guess. And I'm sure under the regulations, the Highway Traffic Act, there's something I would assume is in there, determined loud, right? So what's loud?
It's unnecessary noise, right, which is subjective.
So what's unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
So with that though, not to, minimize anybody's concern about it, I think, we would have to have, which we don't, I can tell you, like, we don't have decimeters or some method to measure. It's very much subjective, where we saw people say, hey, your muffler's too loud. Well, why? So, we can certainly do that. I just don't know, the facts and issue that would be required to prove that to get some sort of, conviction on it. The speeding is certainly something, and I read some of that there. I would agree that sign catches your attention on William Street. And I've noticed it there myself. And this is one of the things that I've said is we'd be interested in the data, if the sign's collecting data on when the prime speed times are, because there's no point. I mean, I could assign an officer out there, especially our part-timers are back and they do that enforcement, right? But that's right, if they're speeding on certain times where the residents are noticing it's worse, those are the times I'd be interested, because I want to see results. And I want to see results for the community. right? If we're putting people out there, visibility is great. But I'm sure we do have speeders and they're probably the same people going at the same times, maybe in the morning and after work, that we should be, issuing tickets to and reminding them to slow down.
I was under the impression we were sharing our speed sign, speed trailer data
Yeah.
with you guys, but if
I think
we
it
aren't, then we
is.
definitely should be.
I'm going to follow up on that too. I want to find out who gets it and when the last time received it is. And then I know though that we do maintain a log of the speed complaint areas that we do get, and we assign that out on a rotational basis to our members. So, but I will follow up on that.
Yeah, because we should be able to produce an Excel sheet at worst that simply shows of the placements. These are the time or the hour, you know, where we get the highest
Yeah,
people speeding.
3 and
And
5
then
every day.
Even without a complaint, that would then, it's an ideal spot to go fishing. Now you're not wasting your time at a time when historically people aren't speeding.
That's right.
So we should,
help
I think it's
track our
Mitch and the
patrols,
guys from the team have that data. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'll follow up to on mine to see who gets that.
Okay.
And if so, when is it assigned? Get some results on that.
So that's an efficient and effective use of your resources rather than just, you know, maybe he's.
Just general patrol, right?
Remember down.
Thank you. I'd like to discuss engine brakes. We put signs up on trucks not to use engine brakes. I was cautioned by a lawyer on, that came to the council table some years ago. That is a safety factor for trucks. If you're found truck drivers not to use it, you better expect some liabilities to go with that.
Mm.
So,
Interesting.
we're telling truck drivers not to use engine brakes, something happens. It's, just for. Probably got a legal opinion.
I've seen signs in many communities where on truck roads, they'll ask truckers to avoid using their engine brakes, but it's not like a prohibition sign you're gonna get done. It's just asking for the courtesy.
He said that. Well, none of the same.
It doesn't.
Well, that makes sense, right? I mean, they're there for a reason. Those are big, heavy vehicles. They can't just stop normally like a war machines.
I tell people. And,
But you know, it's no different than having the train running by your back door. We don't have that here.
unless you're mill right there, no sheds.
Yeah,
You're
you're on the,
on no sheds there.
on the path for an airplane thing too. I mean, there are things that you just have to deal with.
But on mufflers or lack thereof, or modified vehicles, we read about it in the paper, where LPP has done blitzes in other communities. Yeah, so they either have a noise meter or they have somebody with a sliding mirror or a camera, whatever it is, people to get down on their coveralls, and they do kind of blitzes. And they'll find people that have cut out their resonators or eliminated their exhausts. And I know Wasaga does this as part of the big blitz to deter these car shows, but other jurisdictions seem to be able to do this.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a method to enforce it, right? It's just not familiar. I know it is in a punishable offense, so there's gotta be a way. So I'll take that back.
It'd be awesome to have I mean, anytime we talk about this rate, I've talked about it online, I get a flurry of how you gotta do better to do and all kind of responses like that, but. The number one complaint that I get when it comes to it, that's like I'm speeding, so I'll say number 2, is the loud vehicles. Whether it's, you know, the motorbikes that have just hollow types.
Dirt bikes.
On my street, that's a car. There's a lot of random, we buy there every day, sets the guys who got the car on, it's going to start.
Wow,
And that's how loud.
that's loud then. See, now I see that's loud.
Yeah, I would too,
Yeah.
setting off some.
Some people, it's a source of pride, I mean, I understand,
And he does it on purpose.
Yeah, they're stepping it down, like, you know, yeah, okay.
So if I mean, there is a way, it's just a matter of what do you need from us?
Yeah.
To conduct, you know, like, let's like that. Publicize it. Give everyone the opportunity to know.
Yeah.
But just hammer it. If you need support from the council or you need support from this board, or if we can expect a blip in our bill because of that, and I probably defend that. If you could tell me there's a way you're gonna do it and these other services that are done.
But are the complaints that you're getting, those complaints, are they being reported?
Half of them I say, everyone tells,
Just
I
to
mean,
you.
But they mostly say, well, no one does anything, but I'm telling you guys, because you need to get the police to do this.
But they can't do it if they don't know where to go look for it.
There's areas, because inevitably you'll have person driving down the street and setting the alarm off. We know that there's that person, we know where they're going, right? So that's somebody to pick up.
Right.
Yeah. Do that with.
It's tough, because we'll all hear it, it's like, 1 in the morning, you'll hear a motorbike winding up somewhere down by the tracks, coming in the building, you'll hear this thing just. Even through town.
Right behind the house.
And, someone will email the next day, well, it doesn't.
A little late then.
Calling it in doesn't matter, these are things where, an officer need to be in the area, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna try and find this bike, which I can't pursue. Right, or unless the pursuit guidelines have changed, so there's none of that happening, so if you can't get the guy to pull over, which you probably won't, it's largely a waste of time. The rest of the community hears this and thinks the police are doing that, so it's difficult.
I can say we've had a number of fail to stop reports for motorcyclists in the attachment area that just take off. They just don't stop.
And look, there's not a lot of cases.
No, you generally won't get pursued to a motorbike. Like, I mean, if they committed, if it was a murder and then they fled on a bike, yeah, I think we'd light it up and it'd be going. But for a traffic related offense, you have to weigh the risk to the public based on the driving behavior versus the seriousness.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's that weight, and they won't.
They know that.
That's right. So, yeah.
That's my secret. But anyway, a lot of mufflers are just people that are, obnoxiously sounding modified vehicles. It would be nice to read about some, what system that. And I know we'll start by Mustang. It's pretty loud, especially this time of year. But once it warms up and settles down, I haven't modified mine at all. And it's, that's just the way the thing is. Yeah. But even, when I'm at it, that makes a bit more sound when I'm accelerating. It's nothing compared to some of the behind us. To the firewall. So again, we're all experiencing this, and that's what I share with people nicely, but part of the new business thing will be, I'll be asking, we'll wait till we get to it. Definitely, we need to do more than. Yep, sounds good. But thank you, it's. I can, but
You're running out of.
well, I'm having a hard time with it, because I know it is possible, but it's not easy. Sometimes you gotta do some stuff. Anyway. So that's the correspondence, so hopefully, Mr. Van Rissen and, Mr. Molesworth, if they would do watch this, and I'll send them both links, letting them know we did talk about it. We'll take some comfort in that it's not just a letter that we're reading, accepting, forgetting about, it's an ongoing thing, and we do encourage members of the community not only to write to us and to, keep funneling stuff into the complaints department, aka my inbox, but also to make sure that they log all these calls with the police, so that they have the metrics that can justify that this, the targeted or directed patrols.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, other business, which is the catch-all button. I do have a few things on here. We already talked about the open drug use and personal possession, and about the police response to that. But that's good. We had a brief conversation. We're going to talk more about that at the safety symposium, guaranteed. But I did also want to reference the community safety chat that I hosted around the trap houses in town, or drug houses, and just to ask basically whether member Downer or member Westdell, if you had a chance to watch that YouTube session, or were you live on it?
Didn't get a chance.
I didn't even, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's not on the town's website right now, because it's just on my YouTube. I uploaded it after, but if you go to my website, billboard.ca, you'll see the post about it.
Mhm.
The link to it is on there. It's an hour long, and I think some really good stuff was shared.
Yeah, I'd like to be on the next one. I was away when this one is.
And so it sets the sets the tone and the framework for what we're going to be talking about actually next Wednesday at council, because I do have a motion coming before council as a follow-up to this, that we form this sort of multidisciplinary response framework, so that when complaints about these homes come in to the town, that there's a formalized process that everybody gets into the same room, kind of like this RIST format, And triage is, okay, well, what parts for the OPP to play, what parts for the building inspector to play, what about the fire inspection, fire prevention officer? What about bylaw? And so we have this sort of collaborative team approach, so I'll be pitching this as a motion at our next council meeting, and subject to approval by council, and staff will come back with a draft report on our response framework, which includes our policing partners, clearly. But that's the idea, is that rather than shunting everything off to the other duties as assigned kind of department in the police, where everything goes to the police, I would like the municipality to take more of an active, responsible role in seeing what things we do around property standards and noise enforcement, and people that have made modifications to their building that haven't pulled building permits, and their smoke detectors in place, like silly stuff like that. Kind of like the guy that's milky on a traffic stop that ends up with 8 tickets instead of the 1 he could have got. We're going to pay special attention to these things. We want to do it in a fair and defined way, so it's not just ad hoc. And quite frankly, the framework would be applicable to my house. So even though we're designing it to really go after the noise, the problems in our community, it needs to be fair. So it's not targeting anybody. It needs to be as applicable to any of your homes as it is to mine and to these problem homes. So that's just a heads up from the board that this is coming, and with any luck, it'll get approved, and it'll be something that the board will probably have some hand to play, because you'll need to. I think you'll need to give a blessing to this as well, because it's something that we'll be asking the OPP to participate in. As we're heading into our budget 2024 discussions, I'd like to learn more about the CamSafe project that you discussed on our community chat, and if there's any budget implications to its implementation, and who needs it, as you or the town, what role do we play? Because otherwise we may want to get some support from the board, so we can escalate that to council. That we endorse this, and there is budget, we need council to get behind that, our budget. So we could turn over to you to talk about CamSafe.
Absolutely, yeah. So CamSafe is a program that the OPP has partnered with Belleville Police on. Belleville Police are the ones that started this up, so kudos to them. Essentially, it's a residential based program, and I guess our commercial businesses can enroll as well. Ultimately, it's aimed at creating a database of residential and commercial security cameras in communities that will act as a resource for police while investigating offenses and crimes. So really, it's just an online database of camera locations. So if you could picture a map of our communities, what it does is this map actually shows the camera locations in the defined geographical area, and the police can click on that. It opens up how many cameras, where they're facing. So it's all based on what people want to provide to the police. So it's all voluntary. But if they say we have a camera that faces west towards Yonge Street, if that direction lines with Yonge Street off the top of my head, but we can then contact the property owner. So it would have the property owner's name, contact information. We can say, hi, it's the OPP, registered for the CamSafe program. We had an offense that we're investigating, a mischief. Somebody broke a window in a car down the road from you. We're kind of looking in this time frame. We'll be able to review that footage on your camera, on your DVR, on your cloud, see if we can identify a suspect. So that's really what the program is. So it doesn't allow the police to live view your cameras. It doesn't allow us to watch you in the backyard. There's none of that. Essentially, it shows us that there are cameras in the location. We could glean some evidence from it. So it's a broad community registry that's seen some success down in Belleville. It's fully adopted by the OPP right now, and it's something that I'd be interested to introduce into our communities here in an attempt to help us solve more of the crimes that we're facing, because it's always the $1 million question. How do we solve more?
More especially when it's areas like Highway 12, Maisie Line, in the case where that shooting in Victoria Harbor, somebody left the area. Sorry.
Somebody drove in there.
So a lot of the farms along there do not have however, township of Dave put something up in Maisie to record traffic. 24/7 would be a big benefit to you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so that would be a different initiative of which I have emailed actually His Worship about as well as included our chair, Mr. Osborne, in that email. So there was a media release just put out within the last month from the province of Ontario. And that media release says, as a part of the Guns and Gangs grant, which is funding to combat gun and gang violence in our communities, they've now also given closed circuit television grants to certain towns. What caught my eye on that was a lot of those towns were also not just big cities like Toronto, they were also some of our OPP based communities. So I had a chat yesterday. I know that we have a Guns and Gangs grant that we're managing here, and Julie are heavily involved in that. So I spoke with our Staff Sergeant Caleb Denbach in CSU about it, and there's some ongoing discussion. So what I'm going to seek to find out is, how did we introduce that? So how did, the OPP get it in their communities? What was that process to get that funding? I know that a certain amount even of the current G&G grant can be allocated to that. So what I'm trying to find out is, what's the procurement process? How do we go about getting that? How is it paid? And get into that. I think that there is some money there. It's just working out the process of how that would come forward and then making a recommendation back on, this is a direction we could go to. So I think there's two things at play here. One is the voluntary registry of the CAMSAFE program. And then I think there is the G&G grant money to look at for those communities that have experienced gun violence. We had a complaint here in Midland over a parking dispute where somebody just pulled a gun on somebody else. So guns are in the community. So I think that we could have it introduced here, and I think we could have it introduced in some of our other communities that have experienced gun violence. So that's part two of that I would actually look at exploring. And if so there's also another part that what I don't know is, I don't know if there's another grant year specifically under the CCT program coming up, say for up into next year into 24. So if there is, I think it'd be something interesting to put in for, so then it's not all on the municipality for the cost. I don't know if it's a shared cost, so I don't know a lot about it, but I know I would like to look into it, because I think that's a good point, is that, if the cameras don't exist in certain areas, and we could put them in certain areas to monitor the traffic for the purpose of curbing gun crime, where we've had gun crime, then it would apply. So, but I need to, I'm going to reach out to some of the OPP detachments that have explored that and get that, and I can do a report back on that process on how they went about it. And I know in other conversations, I know that Staff Sergeant Denbach will be approaching our law clerk to also discuss some things. So emails coming.
Okay, so the action item for how, when, what's the mechanism to apply? Is it the board need to endorse it? Is the municipality, all that you're gonna follow up with us once you get more information?
Yeah, I'll follow up once I get more information. I want to find out the process, and then we could determine what approvals and then where it should ultimately lie to make that happen. So then I think we'll be better informed. So I will follow up.
Is that for both things?
No, so there are two separate issues. CAMSAFE is something that we could introduce now. What I would look for is, I'd be looking for obviously some joint media. So from endorsement from the Police Services Board, and I don't know, Your Worship, that this would have to go over to council as well, but I think, if the town endorses it, the OPP can endorse it. And much like talking about the loud muffler blitz and getting some media on that, we could get some media that this program exists. We do have concerned residents, and this is a method to help identify those committing crimes and doing things that they shouldn't be in our communities. So I would like some joint endorsement on that. It's endorsed by the OPP.
Does, if I could just ask a quick question about that, as a resident, is there some sort of a particular type of camera as a resident that you need to have or get for this fancy program?
No, any camera will work as long as your cameras obviously are recorded in some fashion, so that, because we can't tap into it live, we would just map the location saying that there is a camera here.
Say you need
that
data
faces
from
this
that
way.
particular time.
Yeah. So I would give
So
you a
need
call.
to store it and so on.
Yeah, so some people have cameras that aren't recorded. Those would not be a particular benefit because we would. You know, the crime has happened and now we're investigating and looking back, so we would need some way to review, right? So some cameras are cloud-based, some record on a home computer.
So that would need to be all as part of the media information about it, explaining that to people.
Absolutely, yeah, there's a lot of documentation that we have from the OPP that was developed by Belleville. That just gives point by point, like a simple pamphlet that we could also post and put out there in the public sphere on, these are the quick hits, this is how the program works. And if you're interested, here's where you go. Yeah,
Okay, so this is basically like a scram program, so you implement it downtown, where the difference being though that there was actually funding attached to the scram program, so the businesses that didn't have a public facing camera, like they just had ones checking out in their store. If they didn't have a spare camera that they could deviate from the store and point out to the sidewalk, for example, there was funding available for a camera to be installed and added onto their system. For people that didn't have any cameras at all, there was funding for a camera to be added onto their system. There isn't funding associated with this. This is more tapping into like crowdsourcing what we've already got. So like I've got a porch pirate camera right now, near my doorbell.
Right.
So that thing is picking up, you know, kind of my front of my house and on the road. So, you know, in the event of, let's say my neighbor gets vandalized down the road, some guy on his camera wearing a balaclava smashes in the windows of his car and punches its tires. Well, there's a very good possibility that the guy walked by my camera without his balaclava on his way down to my neighbor. So the police, short of having to canvass neighborhood, knock on doors after every single incident, hey, do you have a camera? They just go to this map, because I've identified I'm participating and I do have a camera that looks in this area. Go, hey, Gordon's camera might have actually caught this monkey as he's walking down the road, before he pulls on his balaclava.
Right.
So that's kind of the spirit of the program. So we're not asking people to go and make capital investments and put in full security systems.
But if you
Yeah,
already
they got
have
it.
existing things, and
Let us know where it is and it saves officers time for having to canvass neighborhoods.
I'm sure people also, if they were given all the information, like and knew that their camera needed to have a recording, maybe they could get that set up, so it was actually recording.
yeah, depending if people are interested in doing that, they could, right? But yeah, we could definitely put the information out there, but I think it would be a great community initiative, right? To help us, put it this way,
And
we only had one person sign up, one's better than none, so.
And if it's well advertised, it might discourage some of the petty crime that comes along, people know they're being watched.
Well, this even goes to the whole CCT grant, right? You put cameras up downtown where we've had issues in certain areas. It will curb some behavior.
So what do you need from the police services board? Do you need a motion or resolution, or is it good enough to say, yeah, we endorse it?
Yep, I would think an endorsement, and then what I would be looking for then though is a way on, and your worship, we would have this information on how then do we go about and Ron?
So I think if you could outline in a letter to council what you want to achieve and you wanted endorsement and partnership in this summer comes, I think that would be great to come to council, and then we get the visibility as well at council if it's possible to be discussed, and then we could action it after that.
But we, as the police services board, could also offer an endorsement of it, like even here now or whatever, I think, so that.
Yeah,
Then
we
you could go to
could-
council and say, well, the police services board endorses this, and
So we could draft, you know, is that me today, or is that, do I pass it to Mike?
yeah.
But we can draft it short and sweet, saying, you know, after, you know, receiving information about this Cam Safe program, that the police board fully endorses this and recommends that we go to council for, you know, broader adoption.
Yeah.
Because there is no financial aspect to this, it's just about getting us on board and then using our promotional tools to help, you know, get it launched.
Yes, I just realized I just actually reported on to them in my reporting too.
No, it's fine, I can talk to Mike about it, he's aware of this program anyway.
Right,
But if not, I can draft up something short and sweet and just get it into you. I think Mike's got all the letterhead though, so.
Yeah.
I signed up just to be the.
yeah,
And then what we could do is I could put something, and I think there may already be, like, we might have internally anyway. Like I'm looking at a memo here that came from our community safety services section. So I can easily draft something up and then table with council and then
Perfect.
obviously include the letter from police services
Right.
saying the resources.
Yeah, I think
Good.
coming from both sources, I think it's a good thing.
So that plays perfect, unless there's more conversation on that one. It's basically the same ask for the next, one, which is looking for board support for the automatic speed enforcement. So photo radar, that does have capital assigned to it, because there'll be upfront fees, depending on which model we go with, but the concept of putting in automated speed enforcement cameras in community safety zones, which is where they're capped at right now. So we can't put red light cameras in, that's a whole different program. But the automatic speed enforcement in community safety zones, if that's a concept that the board believes is a worthwhile initiative, and clearly the OPP supports it, then I would like the board to send that to council, because that's gonna help with the budget ask that I'm gonna put in, that staff be directed to explore launching a photo radar effectively piloted in Midland, once one becomes available to us through the AMO.
So did you say that cameras were not allowed in municipalities? Because Wellesley,
Not.
No, they are, but we can't do like we can't do a red light camera program, for example, but we can do them in the community safety zones.
Okay.
And, you know, we would, through the vendor that we
I
partner with.
saw one.
Yeah, EFSA is doing them now, like, and there's another announcement, I think Bradford, everyone and their dog is getting on this. And there's two streams, a way to manage the ticketing. One is through the AMPS program, administrative monetary penalties. Where the municipalities keep the lion's share, if not all of the fine revenue. You know, this is about changing behavior more than it is about making money, but it'd be awesome if it paid for itself. With the dum-dum tax that comes with speeding through those past the cameras. The other method is to send the ticketing system, tickets through court. You know, which we all know is backlogged, you know, the stuff's getting turfed left, right, and center, and we don't really see the revenues from that. The quick way to launch this thing is to point it into the court system. But their plan is underway. There's a pilot happening in Barrie where the province and the AMO, or an arm of the Association of Municipalities called LAS, there's way too many three-letter acronyms. They're gonna spin up an AMPS program that will be available to member municipalities. We don't all have to reinvent the wheel and do our own. The AMPS program for provincial offenses, which is speeding, is its own animal, I've learned. And an AMPS program, if we chose to spin one up in Midland for, you know, parking tickets and, you know, municipal bylaws and these complaints and stuff, that's a separate AMPS program. Even though they're AMPS, they don't currently coexist. So what I'm looking for right now is to just get endorsement from the board that, you know what, yes, we support this, and we would like to see it implemented in Midland. And leave the rest of the mechanics of how, when, and where, whether it's an AMPS program or whether it goes to council, to staff once they do the research and figure out what's the quickest path to getting these things installed. Because right now there's really two vendor solutions. One is where you get the cameras for basically nothing. They'll come and put them in, but they take like 70% or whatever of the ticket revenue. The other one is you have to lease the cameras, and they're not inexpensive, and you get to keep all the revenue, but you're entered into a service agreement with the vendor. So that's the one. The latter is the one that the AMO is partnered with through LAS and is recommending, but it's not open. They haven't opened the floodgates yet, so not everyone can sign up. Barrie's in the middle of piloting this. So there's a lot of moving parts, but at its core, if we agree that, you know, in the absence of having more police doing targeted traffic enforcement in our community, if this is an avenue that we endorse, then I'd like the board to endorse that to council so they know that, you know, the number one question is what do we think about it? We can say over here, thumbs up. Now we can start to talk and weigh out what the costs are, and even though we won't know that really honestly for this budget cycle, if we put aside a pool of money in anticipation of rolling this out next year at some point, then at least it's got some budget assigned to it for the time. Staff will be involved, and I'm sure Julie will be involved in this this process pre-procurement. So if anyone needs more information on what this traffic cameras or automated speed enforcement is, you know, I don't want to just push this through and get you guys to say yes, we agree. If you have any questions about it, Inspector Pittman is well versed in it as well.
It was just giving me some information to read about it, which is helpful for sure.
Yeah, some of the research I've done, you know, we did, this came up in our last police service support meeting, and I, you know, I said, I think the question is, do I think that this program would help lower speeds and ultimately create, traffic safety in our communities, because people know that there's speed enforcement cameras, absolutely. People will slow down because they don't want to, pay a fine. Another interesting thing, and this is an older stat too, and I believe I mentioned this as well, is that in 2015, Ontario reported over 88% of POA matters set for trial, which was 315,000 of 355. So basically, we had 42,000 people that volunteered to pay the ticket. The rest wanted to fight. They were resolved on a trial date without a trial, meaning court resources, including the officer's name, were not optimally utilized. So we talk about, how do we have more officers on the streets? How do we keep officers in the community? Well, our officers do spend a lot of time in court fighting certain offenses. Not to say that this will resolve all of that. We will still have offenses laid by officers because it's still a function of the police. But I think that from a community deterrent standpoint, it's valid. It would definitely have some success in our towns. I don't think that we can deny that. I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
So the caveat is that the driver isn't necessarily the one who's gonna have to get the fine, because it goes to the vehicles registered.
It goes to the plate holder. But
But you'll know
But if
who's
you're gonna
driving.
give your car to somebody,
oh, if I'm a parent, my kid's driving and I get a $300 ticket, I can tell you who's getting talking to
Yeah.
about behavior.
So the cost and when we can connect to this program through LAS, or if we choose to, if LAS is gonna take another year until we can even apply for it, we have the option of going with this other company where they get most of the profits. At the end of the day, to me, this isn't about a way to make money. This is about changing behavior in our community. And if we can get to the point where we're not losing money on this program, that's a bonus. If we make a penny, even better. Now we can put it into other traffic calming and things like that, or maybe pay for this special constable pilot, which won't be inexpensive.
if we started out with the program one way where they're taking the majority of fees, can it be changed down the road?
It's all in how we negotiate it. If we
Just
do,
wondering.
we do a year sign up, and then within a year, we have an opportunity to exit and go to LAS.
What
I
is
think
it-
that-
What is LAS mean? Sorry, I don't know all the acronyms.
What does the LAS stand for? Hang on, I'll Google it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's
I-
LAS and
I hate acronyms. I just know.
so
they-
many of them. It's the. It is. Local Authority Services.
Okay, thank you.
It's a preferred provider of innovative and creative programming for Ontario municipalities and the broader public sector. So again, part of this direction from council would be to explore options, whether we go through the LAS one, if there's a waiting period, or if we want to implement it sooner, do we explore the other vendors?
Right.
Because there are a couple other ones to choose from. But guaranteed around council table, the question will be, does the board endorse this? And more importantly, does the P endorse this? And then we can say yes through a letter, or it's always better to have something formal. Then that helps me sell the value proposition of implementing this activity. And also defend the fact that it is just a tax on speakers.
So for today then, would you like someone to move that we create a letter endorsing moving forward with investigating this program and have it implemented in town of Midland?
How would you like to see it? Be under a conversation under new business here, because we don't have a.
Yeah, I think the endorsement letter is great, but I think then it must be also.
Right. That would have to be generated by Mike again.
He's not here, he's getting voluntold and.
Yeah.
Writing letters.
Don't show up to me.
Yeah, so in the absence of a formal motion, I think
It's
we're good enough to say we have these two letters that need to get drafted.
right. I think I'm in agreement with all that.
Just for, and I don't know who's gonna message this to Mr. Osborne, but I think that I'm comfortable as well saying that, we've been consulted with. I have no issues with the program. I mean, yes, it's run by the municipality. But I think my comment would be that I do believe that it would help contribute to traffic safety in our communities. Is what I can prepare to say.
Perfect, and it doesn't mean that you'll pay less attention to our municipalities because we put these cameras in.
Absolutely not. Well, we still have a large function on traffic safety on our roads, and there's no shortage of roads, so.
Okay, the next one is the one you introduced, which is the rapid intervention support team. Who leads that? You know, is it again, something we need to give blessing to? Does it need to go to council? Is there any cost associated with it, or is this more just for our information right now?
I would say more for your information right now. So I've reached out to the Hamilton Police Service, the proprietors of this, and have asked for a presentation from them. And I was thinking by way of process, they could come present the information to me. I take it all, get my ducks in a row, and then come and present it to the services board. And if the board supports, then again, you could send something from official to council just on how that looks. My understanding of the program right now, it was police initiated in that the police brought community partners around the table. So what I want to find out is exactly who sits at that table, what function do they perform in the rapid intervention support team. And I know that they have funding from the province of Ontario. So I also want to know how they got that funding. Who did they go through? What was the mechanism to obtain that funding? And is it because they all will also have information, is it looking like something that we want to spread right across the province? And if that's the case, I just don't want us as communities to miss that opportunity to be a part of that, I guess is my concern. So right now it's just information. Again, high level is that there are strategic partners around the table. I know they're from housing. I know they're from, so that would also municipality. I know that they're from community services, mental health, addiction specialists. I know that they have counselors. I know that they have employment staff there that look at placing these people with jobs. So there's a lot of groups around the table. It was police initiated, but the police don't lead that group because they're not the subject matter experts in homelessness and addictions. But that's directly what they go to target. Their program is full-time, meaning that they are boots on the ground. They are actually physically in the community and often dealing with a lot of the homeless and addictions-based population. The tent cities that are popping up in the area, they go into those areas. They talk to the people, they work with them, and they try to get, because there will be some that are resistant that don't want the help, and that's fine. But for those that want to be helped, they are looking at reintegrating those folks back into society. And I think it's an amazing program, and I think it helps deal with the root causes of a lot of the issues that we see in the community. So I think it's excellent. So I will get more information back. They emailed me back and said that there's so much popularity and interest in the program right now that they can't come to do a presentation until January, February, is what I've heard back from Hamilton. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is get some information back over email, Cole's notes version on the program, who leads it, how they get them on the table. I know that they did a PowerPoint up for presentation. I'm going to see if I can obtain that PowerPoint and go from there. So what I'm committing to do is gather more information, and I'll bring it back to this table.
Perfect. Do you think you'd have something high level for the community safety symposium you could share? So this sounds like it may tie in with an opportunity that's coming to Midland from One Community Solutions.
Yeah, so we're a month out. Yeah, I think it would get something back within a month.
Okay, and then we can get a more, fulsome report to the board, but that might be a great time to tease or dangle that, because I say this, it's not outreach, but this One Community Solutions is something that there's funding from the county that will be on the streets in Midland. And they're an alternative security company. They specialize in a hands-off approach to de-escalation and group management. And they're trained to go out and interact with the people, laying in the entrance of the van, or people that are shooting up on the, so it's not a police first response. So anyway, there'll be more about that coming soon through our community safety symposium, but we've got a lot of neat multifaceted things coming. It'll be really being squeaky wheel of the county, trying to get things into North Simcoe. So what's going to be needed? Yeah. Awesome. The last one, we talked about the blitz concept for mufflers in town. However, what are the odds with PC Thompson and perhaps any other part-timers of you dedicating or able to direct some targeted enforcement in Midland, in core Midland? Like, so we're seeing, traffic stops on Minden and Young and Hugel and William, and actually just assign the officer to Midland for today and just empty the ticket book. Just hammer the hell out of Midland for 1 or 2 days out of the month. Is that something that's normally would be out of scope? We can't ask you to do this.
Yeah.
Based on, your part-timers, is that something that you could commit to us? I mean, barring a plane falling out of the sky or another building collapsing or another homicide that day?
Jinx herself.
Yeah.
But I think absolutely, and I appreciate the spirit of it, right? And it's not that you're directing police operations in any way, you're just, making recommendations based off of what you hear. Is this a possible thing? And it is possible, right? We could definitely, I can definitely direct traffic enforcement in certain areas. So what I would be looking for is the downtown core. Is there anywhere specific? Is it William Street on the hill with the speeders, or is it all that area really that we're looking at?
I'd pick any of our arterial roads, and spend an hour or 2 on each, basically the 8-hour day, but in Midland. Like, we don't need 8 cars or anything in town. If you had just one officer who's just, mercilessly nailing anybody over 10 kilometers an hour. And if they hear us speeding, really, the intent is not for warnings and driving education, it's deterrence.
Yep.
And again, I take the heat for this, for people complaining about that, but if it's possible and you have the resources, if we could set something up on a cadence, like, once a month is Midland Hammer Day. It's not always the same day, obviously. And then you may get the same ask from Tay and Tiny, and other detachment service areas, and that's cool. But I'm wondering, if this is possible, it would be warmly welcomed by the community. And we could then say, listen, we're doing what we can here, and so are police.
Yeah, so I think what we're looking for then would be rotational traffic enforcement, like with dedicated community enforcement, and starting up sort of a pilot on that to determine success. I can direct that happen. I can't direct the enforcement piece. I mean, I could say, we would like to see enforcement, however, also maintain discretion, their own discretion that comes with the same authority that I have. So I have no other authority in that matter, but I could certainly explore that and get our officers to do that. And it would take a bit of structure, but yeah, that's something that we could look at to see if there'd be any positive community impacts, almost like I did the directed patrols in and around the library and mandatory patrols twice a day and curb that. And I notice even now, because I'm still driving, I don't notice, and it could be the cooling weather too. There's not as many people out as there used to be, so that something is changing in there, which is nice to see. But I think, that's something I could certainly look at doing, is some directed traffic enforcement, which is rotational through the entire detachment.
Let's use the intelligence we already have from our signs. So let's get current sign data from our trailer and signs for the roads that they've been on, and for the most part, those are our main arterial roads.
Yeah, I think that in that intelligence space, it's almost like the old concept of ILP, intelligence-led policing, right? That intelligence drives operations. So where's the issues? What's the intel on that? And then we could better target off.
They can plan their day around that data.
Yep.
And that'd be great, because then we could get some of those Twitter pictures in town. Rather than being at Johnston Food Market and the usual, if Frankie Kinder and all the usual fishing holes, like, let's just really deep in our community, even though technically it's better. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think, oh, they're not out on the highway, they're safe here in town, but not so much.
No.
Anyway, we don't need to coordinate that with you. Clearly, we can't direct you, but if that's something you want to raise with us and then follow up with, hey, here's some good stats, we did this. Use it as a photo op for your team, get the stats to us, we'll be happy to promote it. Say that it's something we talked about at the board, and if you were able to, based on resource assignment, we're able to make this happen.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I'll take that away.
Awesome, that's the end of my add-on stuff. I know I had a bunch of other stuff. Any other new business from, we're just about 7 minutes over time, but. Okay. There's no closed session matters, so we move right to number 16, which is adjournment. So I have a motion here to adjourn. And so that this is the that the Midland Police Service Board regular meeting held September 20th, 2023 be adjourned at 12:07 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. You can stop the recording and encourage you to keep engaging with us.